Hello, and a warm welcome to another edition of the Irish Angle. I have Johnny Ward, Emma Nagle here, and we're going to go through all the things that happened in the last week in racing, both here and abroad. Emma, Johnny, welcome to the show.
Hi, Vinny.
Thanks, Vincent.
Now, starting off, with loads of things to go through here. We start off with the Cesarewitch. Alphonse Legrand got thrown out of the race on Tuesday over Jamie Powell's use of the whip. And they've already announced they're going to appeal the decision, the connection to the horse. So question is, first off, what did you think of the sanction? I personally have a problem with it. The 28 days on top of losing the race for Jamie Powell, I think, is a bit severe. Emma, what did you make of it?
Yeah, I agreed fully. 28 days seemed very, very harsh. I mean, he already kind of had the blow of losing such a high profile race. And the prize money and like the money he would have got from just winning that. So to ban him from 28 days after that seemed a bit extreme. Look, I suppose they were probably always going to appeal. Now, whether their appeal will be based on the fact that the last strike on the horse didn't actually connect or not, I'm not sure will they be successful, but you can probably see the reasoning why but again, the rules were broken. The only problem I had with it on the day, we kind of mentioned it last week, was that the decision wasn't made faster. But I think the Jamie Powell ban is very, very harsh. And your blog was very good, in fairness. The last line, just because more people saw it, doesn't make it more wrong. I can't understand why. You kind of mentioned in the blog, for a more high profile race, the sanctions are more strict on the jockey. It makes absolutely no sense to me. It's the rules are the rules. They should be the kind of consistent throughout all levels of racing. So yeah, no, you'd feel sorry for Jamie Powell. You can kind of see, like, in the heat of a moment in the big race, like, they're probably more likely to break it. And we were kind of mentioning last week, like, he's an apprentice rider based in Ireland, the rules are different. So yeah, I just thought 28 days was very, very harsh. You'd have to feel sorry for him.
Yeah. What do you make of it, Johnny? Because this is the whole thing. The sanctions here, not just the losing the race, but the other sanctions that go on the rider as well, they're proportionate to the importance of the race, basically. So the more important the race, the bigger the sanction. That seems wrong, does it not?
Well, it strikes at the bogus concept that those running British racing have about this fear. They're afraid of people who have no interest in racing, and that is the bottom line. They're afraid of. It's almost like this idea that there are all these people somehow watching terrestrial racing on a Saturday, and where we see one of the greatest finishes you imaginable to a staying flat race, and the staying flat races mean so much to us, and the stayers on the flat mean so much to us. Somehow the BHA is like, oh my God, imagine if you're one there who doesn't like race and saw Jamie Powell and hitting the whip 4 times over. Geez, we better sanction him. And I tell you what, this is a jockey now who's like having a really rough post apprentice title season. He's only just getting going. Tell you what, we'll actually throw him out of a big race for being one over the 9. And we'll also hand him a 28-day ban. This is a rider who's very little experience riding in big races, very, very little experience riding in big races in Britain. But we're pandering here to this notion of animal welfare, even though the whip it's not a whip for one thing. It's a little bit of a little bit of rubber that doesn't harm the horse in the slightest. It just makes a crack sound. Now, I think every jockey and every trainer, and we all will agree that you can't batter the horse with this thing 100 times a race because the optics are bad. But the fact that they've done this to Jamie Powell, where they give him a 28-day ban on top of losing the race over, like, can you just imagine a jockey having to think in his head, like, there's a horse the far side of the track here, and I'm desperately trying to win this race. I haven't a clue if I'm winning. I'm trying to win a big race for connections. I'm trying for the horse as well to win a race. Horses actually like winning races, and I have to somehow think: have I hit him 9 or 10 times here? What would the BHA think about this? Actually, oh, I've actually lost a race now. Like, it's totally absurd, and it's not that I do agree that there should be rules in place, and maybe horses should be disqualified. Maybe the disqualification itself is merited. The disqualification and 28 days for what Jamie Powell did. Like, if he'd shot the horse, what would he have gotten? Like, could he have gotten much more? It's like, I don't know. But this is why British race is in turmoil. The people running it utterly, they haven't a clue. They really haven't a clue of what's right and what's wrong in terms of horse racing and where this is going.
Yeah, the little kernel in it, for me anyway, is yes, the decision to disqualify the horse is correct. If someone breaks the rules, whatever that may be, I think there has to be an ultimate sanction of a disqualification. But the other sanction on top of it is crazy. As I mentioned in my blog today, if anyone wants to read it, it's on the website. The first guy who got done under this new rule was a guy called Alex Edwards, back last November in a minor race. And he hit the horse 9 times more than the permitted limit. and he got a 24-day ban. Plus, he lost 600 quid in potential prize money, his share of the prize money he would have got. Jamie Powell lost 9 grand in his share of the prize money. Plus, he gets 28 days, and he's only 4 over the limit. So that's the whole thing. It doesn't work out for me, and I think it's an issue they're going to have to look at. To be honest with you, I'd be interested to see what happens in the appeal. Anyway, moving on. Another appeal that was heard last week was Shark Hanlon over his misdemeanor that he did, which was the horse in the trailer that was uncovered, and he was to lose his license for 10 months, but 5 months suspended or whatever. And so he appealed that last week, but they're going to take 2 weeks before they tell us the verdict. And in the meantime, he's sending half his horses off to a dispersal sale in the UK, which seems a bit drastic in my opinion, because he must have some chance of getting it back. And even if he doesn't win the appeal, he still maybe only is out for 5 months. What do you make of that, Emma? Is that a strange decision from Shark to send those horses off to the sales?
Yeah, I suppose he was kind of left in an awkward enough spot, with the appeal being deferred for 2 weeks. I suppose he was maybe hoping to find out, like, if it would be shortened, maybe he mightn't have sent as many as, I think, 28 in there tomorrow to be sold. So he was kind of left in an awkward spot by that. And it'll be very, very interesting in a week's time or whatever it will be when they come out with the verdict of this, because everyone, I suppose, has heard Shark's argument already, and there's kind of been a big kind of online petition in support of Shark. And it was even surprising that Edward O'Grady showed up for the appeal, and was saying he was an agricultural man doing agricultural things. And look, you can see the Shark side of it, in fairness, but they didn't, like, the IHRB, just reading quotes afterwards, they didn't really seem too interested in the argument. And I think Shark's representative was kind of comparing it to the bans given to Gordon Elliott and how Rob James was treated as well when their kind of similar incidents came out a couple of years ago. But they didn't really see the comparison to that. So look, it's kind of hard to say too much about it now, but I think Shark was saying as well, like, the future of Uick, who we saw kind of returning last week, is a bit under consideration, just because I think Shark's partner Rachel actually applied to do the trainer's course, but there was no space for her recently. So I mean, like, if Shark is banned, and Rachel can't get the license in time, like, Uick, who's back on the track now, like, where's he going to go? What are they going to do with him? So look, it'll be interesting to see how these horses sell tomorrow, I suppose. And there's no real massive high profile names. I suppose there's one winner recently in England, Lion City, who will probably be the best of the lot in there. But look, I suppose what can you say about it, really? It'll be interesting to see what the result of the appeal is.
Yeah. What about you, Johnny? You thinking of buying any of these Shark horses at the sales?
Jeez, yeah, I'm involved in one horse again, and the trainers kind of telling me now that things aren't going that well, and it's just like, why do I get myself into this again? So no, I'm not getting involved in horses. Like, it is funny, like, how kind of attractive it is to have horse and train at the moment. So we'll see a lot of the horses going to the sales now that Shark is saying they won't make any money, because these horses are essentially worth nothing. Because if you have a low grade horse, like, he's basically, his prize money versus training fees, like, it just doesn't add up. And so that's kind of the difference in the top and the end of the scale at the moment. But like, I have sympathy for Shark at one level, and I've said this to him, but I feel like it kind of happened at a bad time for him, subsequent to the stuff about the abattoir. And he was also mentioned, remember, Shark was mentioned in that piece on RT. He had the stuff about the abattoir, so he was one of the trainers who'd sent horses there, and many horses obviously ended up there. And then you had Gordon Elliott, and then you had the other kind of welfare issues that have been hitting the sport of late. So the timing was bad. And I do have some sympathy for him, but with respect to the IHRB, like, I think the IHRB wasn't overly happy with the way that he conducted himself initially in the inquiry, and also the fact that the optics are really, really bad of this. Like, I mean, it's funny. We've a weird thing about animals that the optics of animals. I remember I put up on Instagram a photo of a deer that was shot near my home place in Galway, and I got like bad reaction from people on Instagram. You can't be putting that on Instagram. These are the same people that will have a chicken fillet roll and won't think anything of it. You know what I mean? Whereas this deer actually had a very good life and was shot and didn't know anything about it. But it's the optics of it, and people seeing a dead horse in the back of a trailer, like, it is a problem. And we as an industry, we've a big elephant in the room in terms of what we do with horses that aren't good enough. So I do have sympathy for Shark, but at the same time, the IHRB had to come down on it. And also with there's more now put into the explanations. You can't just like lose your license and then do everything as normal behind the scenes. And we saw the reaction to Tony Martin going over to Newcastle that time. And so I have sympathy for the IHRB on this. I have sympathy for Shark as well. But as I do feel sending the whole horse to the sales might be something a little bit tactical about that. I don't know. But I don't know where this is going to end up. I saw the video at the time. I thought the optics were terrible, to be honest.
Yeah, like, but you've like, I know he was saying about the tarpaulin coming off, but like, if it was the exact same video, even people saying it was the same person, but it wasn't Shark Hanlon branded Buick on the back of the truck. Like if it was just a Toyota pulling the trailer, like would there have been a ban? There probably wouldn't have been. It's like it's total optics, like, isn't it?
It's the very same with the Jamie Powell thing, isn't it? The higher profile the thing becomes, the more the sanction seems to be, and that I think is wrong. Like a crime is a crime. If you've broken rules and you're due to be sanctioned, it should be based on what the rule breaking was, and not necessarily who happened to see it, which is what I think is the issue with the Jamie Powell one. I think it also runs through this Shark one, the fact that he had a branded vehicle, and that was part of the issue, because they even mentioned that in the original hearing as well, which I find a bit interesting. The other thing, just back to this, is we've Tony Martin. He's due back this week, back training. So the question would be, Johnny, will he be the one representing Alphonse Legrand at the appeal, or will it be his sister?
Jesus, yeah, I can't get my head around it anymore. I didn't realize Harvey was back that quickly. There we go. A lot has happened since then. Yeah, I don't know. But you'd imagine these trainers, like, and at some point you have to kind of just say to yourself, I'm not going to get into any more issues with the IHRB. Like, I'm just going to, because it's just like we've had too many instances with the same trainers getting into trouble, and like it's not a great image, to be fair. Like, I mean, the IHRB does, in my view, does a very fair job, and most trainers don't really have issues with this, and like trainers kind of do need to get their houses in order in this regard as well.
The thing that drives me bananas with all of this is every single time the IHRB goes to any trainer in the country, I don't care who it is, they go into any yard and they do one of these spot checks, they find that the medical register is not updated. Surely to God, that it's the first thing a trainer should do every morning. If any trainers watching this, when you get up now tomorrow morning, first thing you do, just fill in that medical register. Every single time they haven't got it filled in, they haven't got it done correctly. It seems to stop. What happens with your dad with that, Emma? Do you do it for him, or who does it, or what happens?
We actually had our first ever IHRB inspection, I'd say just before the summer, maybe towards the end of the season, and everything was in order, Vincent. So I will. Yeah, everything was in order. The back protectors were on. All the horses were in the yard. Everything was perfect. So yeah, no, it's you can't tear us all with the same bush now.
Fair enough. Anyway, we'll move on to Champions Day at Ascot last Saturday. Obviously, cracking racing, but the first thing to note is the three champions that were crowned for champion trainer, champion jockey, champion apprentice jockey, all Irish. That's astonishing, Johnny, isn't it?
Yeah, well, they're very good at kind of exponents of the sport, and yeah, like I think we've some very good riders in Ireland and Britain. Some very good young riders at the moment in Ireland and Britain, and I really like this day's. I have to say, I really like Champions Day at Ascot. Like, it's kind of, you almost expect the ground to be soft, so you kind of maybe target it with a particular type of horse. It's 6 races as well. It's kind of very condensed, and it's just like quality from start to finish. And like Aidan O'Brien again, like, supported very, very well with horses who may have been over the top going there, or certainly ran as if they might have been over the top. But it's a cracking day's racing. And it's interesting that they just kind of run the 6 races there, and we had some good performances. I was obviously very disappointed in Los Angeles. I thought maybe the I suppose the season has been a bit too much for him. But Sharon, I thought, put in a very good performance the way he travelled in the race. Kyprios, just I don't know. I don't think I've ever seen a horse that's the most backable odds-on shot or whatever he is every race. It's like, why would you oppose him? And even the race in post, I think the Spotlight came up with a reason to oppose him again. He was brilliant. And yeah, the Kalpana race was brilliant to watch as well. Kalpana's been a hell of a horse this season. It's a great day's race. Just really condensed 6 races. Condensed from start to finish, and some cracking action.
Yeah, and just back to those champions that were crowned at the weekend. We've got Shan Bone, an apprentice who's a nephew of John Nallen from Manila Hotel fame, and he's champion apprentice. You've Oisin Murphy talking about he's not even going to go for the championship next year. Most likely, he's done it enough at this stage, and it's too much on him. Shan Bone could potentially be a champion jockey in the UK in the flat in the next 2, 3, 4 years, perhaps. And then you've gotten the jumps. You've got a different Shan Bone. It's looking like being champion jockey there. That's astonishing, isn't it? Two lads of the same name. Anyway, Emma, back to you. What about the performance the weekend? With economics bursting again, with a big shock winner in the big champion stakes, and people thinking Kander Gan was a bit unlucky. What did you make of it all?
Yeah, just kind of stay on Shan Bone just for two minutes. I just think it's probably hasn't been amplified enough. Like, he only moved to the UK in March, I think it was, and he's champion apprentice in October. Like, that's absolutely incredible. Like, I don't know, maybe he had a couple of odd rides in the UK before that. Like, he was based with Dennis Hogan here, like you said. He rode a bit for John Allen as well, his uncle. But like to become champion apprentice, like in the UK, I think he went over. Like, he was doing quite well here. I think. Did he ride 19 or 20 winners last year? But he went over just because there's so much more racing. I suppose it's a good place to get more rides and just kind of build more experience. But like, he's going over there without much knowledge of all the different tracks. But like, to go over, it's so competitive to be champion apprentice. So I just thought it was brilliant. And like you said, Oisin Murphy as well, back to his best. It'll be interesting to see whether because I think he had 100 more rides than any other jockey in Britain, so he really kind of pushes himself through it, doesn't he, to get it's a bit like Tony McCoy, I think, like back in the day, wasn't he saying like he was absolutely obsessed with being champion? And Oisin kind of seems to have the same mindset, which is a tough thing to kind of keep doing year on year out. So interesting to see, does he step back a bit again next year? But yeah, you kind of mentioned the champion stakes. I suppose the massive disappointment was economics. Like, we're kind of talking about him all year, like, will he go here, will he go there? Will he be back to a race course now after bleeding again? Like, he won the Dante obviously after bleeding, and people are maybe saying that was the Haggis Yard being dishonest about it, but like, he did actually hit his head in the stalls, and like, maybe they didn't actually know what caused the bleeding on the day. It was in the steward's report and all that, and you know, he came back after that, and it seemed to be no issue winning the Irish champion and all that, but. It's massively disappointing, like, because, you know, he's a horse we were kind of hoping to see more of this year. Like, they were kind of blaming the soft ground afterwards, but like, if he comes back next year, then like, we were kind of hoping maybe he'd be one for the Arc and all this, but like, he probably won't even run in the autumn now again if this soft ground is going to cause issues for him. So that was disappointing. Obviously, backers of Kander Gan were very sick as well. Because I backed him, and he had absolutely no one out down the inside there. He got out very late, and he was just ran down again in the end. So, but. Like, kind of like Johnny mentioned, like, Champions Day in Britain, it's kind of so late in the year, the ground, you can kind of throw up funny results. So, yeah, as you kind of mentioned Los Angeles, kind of another one. Like, Aidan O'Brien actually doesn't have the best record in Champions Day. I think it was like 4 or 5 years before, like, until Kyprios won. Like, it was going back a fair bit until he had one. So, I'd say with Los Angeles, it was just like he had nothing to lose, really, wasn't it? They kind of changed tactics, like people were saying about Ryan Moore in the Arc, that maybe he shouldn't have made the running, and I don't know. I thought he was probably still right to do it that day, but they kind of used Continuous as a bit of a pacemaker, who has been a massively disappointing horse this year, I suppose, overall. But yeah, look, Charon, like you mentioned, that was a good one for the punters, and interesting to see that he might go to Japan next as well. He's going to go to Stud in France, so it was an enjoyable day of racing, definitely, and it was nice to see the Irish dominating the the championships over there. So
I think as well, like, trainers train horses differently. John Ryan runs horses a lot. He told me lately he runs them a lot because they don't get, you know, the handicapper isn't going to respond to them if they're not running. And if they run disappointingly, they actually get dropped in the handicap. That is a rational kind of analysis of run your horse a lot. Jim Bulger run a 2-year-old 3 times in a week, like, and he ran Finchgale Bio and the 3 Guineas one after the other. But Aidan to run Los Angeles again was like, it probably was a little bit of a shot to nothing. But maybe that's why if he doesn't have a great record at the meet, maybe it's like some of these horses are just literally over the top at this stage. Like, with regard to economics, like, he was essentially, if you take away his debut effort, see the Stars beaten on debut, economics was unbeaten since his debut, and stuff like this is massively like, it's so damaging to a sire. Like, you're not going to go near a sire at a certain price, particularly who's a bleeder. It's just as simple as that. So that's why I guess that's why, like, it's so damaging to his prospects going forward.
do you think he'll be back next year, or will they call it? Like, he hasn't done a whole pile. Like, I know he's won big races, but he hasn't won a whole pile. Like,
yeah, I'd say as well, with if they want to view with the view to his stallion career, the best way to respond to that is to try and prove that it was a one-off, and that he can kind of you know, a bit like Augusta Rodan. I'm not saying he was a bleeder or whatever, but he just came back into his 4-year-old season, and you know, he will go to stud now, and they probably said, we need to show that this horse is a lot more robust than some disappointing runs the 3 suggested. And with economics, I think in terms of like I don't see the point in I don't see the point in not racing him further at this stage, because as a stallion, he's definitely compromised now.
Here's a little thing just about that Champions Day. Obviously, the British flat season goes out in a blaze of glory with a cracking card, 6-race card with top horses running, and it's the end of their season. We do the same in Ireland with the National Hunt with Punchestown, the last day of the festival and everything else. What about the flat here? It goes out in a whimper, doesn't it? Does anyone even know what meeting it is? It's a minor meeting at the Curragh on the 4th of November or something is the last day. But like, should we not have a bit more of a spectacle for the last day of the season here, Johnny?
Yeah, I have to say, no, I haven't really thought about it that much, but you're right. Yeah, it doesn't. I mean, it was it the last flat race at Nagle? Like, I love the flat. I'm actually thinking like of the flat being over now for the next few months and seeing a lot of uncompetitive maiden hurdles and all of that, and the national hunt being dominated by a very small number of people, which the flat isn't actually. I'll be lost or sad anyway when the flat goes, but it does go out in a bit of a whimper. I think it was like Nace was saying, it was our last Nace flat meeting of the season, and yeah, it does go out in a whimper, and I guess we always have done that.
Yeah, we always have done talk. There you go. Keeps everyone going. Anyway, just moving on to other stuff from the weekend. We had Limerick, obviously, the Munster National was on yesterday. 30 non-runners on the day because of the ground. A lot of controversy over it. I see Philip Rothwell wasn't happy. He was saying the ground description wasn't what was actually on the ground. And a lot of the jockeys were saying that too, that they thought it was a lot quicker than the official description, which I presume is why all the runners were coming out. Is this a bit of a problem, Em? Is it calling the ground what it actually is? Philip Rothwell was saying this has happened a few times in recent weeks at different meetings where it wasn't the proper description.
Yeah, I suppose it's tough there for trainers going and they're calling the ground like yielding, and it's actually maybe closer to good to firm or something like that. But you would feel a little bit of sympathy for Limerick as well. Like, weren't they in a bit of controversy there? Like, speaking of Shark Hanlon earlier, it wasn't the national meeting obviously, but it was some other meeting, and they had overwatered the ground in his opinion anyway, and they were getting slack for that as well. And like, I've seen people arguing about watering the ground this time of year, like overwatering it to make it like maybe more suitable for like these Munster national kind of types. Like, should a horse who actually likes good ground have a crack at be able to get their ground like when it actually comes up naturally? But I'm just hoping it's not going to be kind of a reoccurring theme kind of as we kind of get into the national hunt season as well, because like we haven't got an awful lot of rain, like substantial rain anyway. So like you kind of hope like maybe conversely to what you'd like for your own lifestyle, but like you'd hope that the weather starts to change a bit soon, because we could see kind of delays to the big horse coming out. Like we saw Thurles cancel last week. Obviously Thurles would be one of the fastest tracks, and like they take a fair bit of rain, but yeah, it was a pity, and like it was I suppose unfortunate for the people who went down to Limerick to watch it, but having so many kind of ones pulled out of the national, and Faring Glory, who would have been a big name running in the last race in the day as well. It wasn't great, but it's a tough job, managing the race courses, because you're going to get slack whatever you do really. But going descriptions are so subjective. Like, every different person will really have a different opinion on how the ground is. So yeah, it's a tough one really, isn't it?
Yeah. And Johnny, you were down there. I saw you did a great interview with Charles Burns. You got loads out. But the other thing to note with that, you were working for Racing TV, and we've got the new gambling regulation bill has, after going past through all the stages in the Dáil, it's going to come into law soon, and that will potentially have a big impact on Racing TV and other TV coverage of horse racing, because they're not allowed to have any gambling advertising during the shows, which is completely through all the live coverage of all racing, both in Ireland and the UK. So what do you make of that, Johnny? Is that you'd know more about it? You're at the coal face, I suppose.
Yeah, I do work for Racing TV. Every chance, like, I lose a lot of work over this going down the line if Racing TV struggles, because, and it may well. So I'll put that out there. But my view on it has absolutely nothing to do with my personal circumstance or anything like that. And I always would like to think I'm pretty fair in terms of my analysis of something. Whether it's good for me or not doesn't matter. With this is a disgrace. Like, this, what James Brown is doing here, absolutely flies in the face of where gambling is going in terms of racing. We have the levy board telling us that British racing turnover is down 20% or more in 2 years. It's a staggering loss. You have affordability checks, and you can argue the point that affordability checks are right, premium charges on the exchanges are right, whatever way you want. And there's no doubt gambling companies behaved like in a very, very bad manner for years. But that era is gone. So we're going to have a potential funding crisis for racing going forward. Even in Ireland, our prize money, I think, is poor at this stage. I think it couldn't get much worse actually. For the industry to survive. Yet that's pretty much half of that is paid for by the government. And we have a funding crisis coming forward. But you're trying to tell me that if I have my son is in the room here, he can't watch racing TV, so I'm not responsible for his welfare, because during the day he might just be watching TV when a gambling ad comes on a racing subscription channel. Racing and gambling have been the same thing, or have been intertwined forever. Basically, one will not survive. Racing will not survive without gambling. And you're telling me that we can't put gambling ads on a subscription racing channel that I'm paying for, and you're telling me I can't look after my son here, but then degenerates who drink on them can basically see gambling ads at 10 o'clock at night after a football game. And like, for me, James Brown he's so out of order on this. Like, he just would not listen to real concerns within the industry as to where this is going. And like, I'm really worried about this, Vince. Like, and this is to do, obviously I'm worried about my career going forward. I'm worried about the work, but I'm extremely worried about Irish racing, because the funding of, and I feel people I said this to Charles in the interview, I think people in the industry haven't a clue how bad this could be. It's really, really worrying how few people are betting on racing relative to what it was. Down about 50% on the betting exchanges over the last few years, down about 50%, but down about 20% in 2 years, according to the levy board. Where is this going to go? We need people betting on racing for it to be funded. And now James Brown comes in with this as well, basically telling me that I can't look after my kid if I race on TV on during the day. I think it's so out of order, and I feel he hasn't a clue about how damaging this could be. Either that or he's just not listening.
Yeah, well, look, there's no doubt horse racing's in a very different predicament to most other sports, because mainstream advertisers, whether they be Bank of Ireland and all sorts of different companies, Guinness and Diageo and the rest of it, they embrace other sports generally, such as rugby, soccer, GAA and everything else, for their sponsorship, and they spend a huge amount of money on it, Lidl and everything, on women's camogie or whatever it may be. But they don't tend to want to get involved with horse racing because of the gambling aspect to it. So I don't think racing TV or any other mainstream broadcaster is going to be able to replace the gambling advertisers with mainstream advertisers overnight. So it's looking like Horse Racing Ireland are going to have to broker some deal with Racing TV, probably RTE. I think they already paid them a few quid anyway to show horse racing during the year. But you're going to get to a stage that Horse Racing Ireland, or the industry itself, is going to have to start funding this to some level. And if they start to do that, they're going to have to take money away from prize money, aren't they?
And can I just say one more thing, Vinny? This really, really wrecks my head. Like, all these, like, every time I see this, like, Flutter making billions and we're turning this into that, and like, it makes me sick to see how much money the big companies are making, and how what David Power would have set up has become this thing that, like, you know, it's going to the States and it's massive. But like, the betting companies could do happily without Irish racing going forward. They have so much money. They've so much money to spend on whatever the hell they want, and they're losing interest in racing. And now you're telling them you can't actually you can't even advertise on a racing channel. You can't do that because we're going to ban you. I was like, okay, how does that solve anything?
Yeah. It's going to be a mess going forward, isn't it? Look, we'll see what ends up. I'm sure Horse Racing Ireland and Racing TV and the rest of them all have their thinking hats on this morning. It'll probably be a year before it comes into full practice, because all the operators, the betting operators, have to be licensed here. Whether they decide to do that or not is another question, but that's what has to happen with the new authority. And then by the time they get all these sanctions in place, it probably will be a year or so before we see any real difference, but it's in the offing. One other thing, Emma, you'll have to tell me about Randwick in Australia last week. Nearly 50,000 people singing Sweet Caroline in the stands. What did you make of that? Could you see it happening in Thurles on a Thursday?
Maybe not Thurles on a Thursday. Yeah, we don't know what they get out of the crowd to do that. Like, you've seen it maybe a bit more with the young, like the days that the big young crowds go racing. I think we were both at the Irish National last year, and there was a good chanting from the stands. Was it, I don't know, it was before or after the race? I know they're having a great time, but yeah, no, they do kind of racing a bit different in Australia, don't they? Like, the whole kind of country seems to stop for their big race days. But like, I actually, thinking back to Cheltenham last year, I think, was it after the last race on the Friday or something, and there was kind of groups of young lads kind of doing the same thing. They were chanting something or another. I think it might have been like even the Ruby song or something like that. And like the reaction on social media, like, compared to, you know, this Australian atmosphere, gets praised, kind of, you know, having a bit of crack between the races and stuff. But some of the like British racing fans in particular, I don't think, I think everyone kind of enjoyed it at Ferryhouse that day, but they thought, it wasn't really the behaviour to have on a race course, which might be an attitude that puts off the younger kind of greener generation coming into it. So I don't think we really kind of appreciate that kind of having a bit of crack at the races as much as they maybe do in Australia. And look, if we saw something similar in an Irish race course, I don't think anyone would be complaining.
Yeah, I think the sing-songs in Ireland generally happen after the races is the thing, isn't it? We go off to the pub afterwards and sing our hearts out. What about you, Johnny? Could you do a bit of singing on your days working for racing TV?
I feel the atmosphere of race meetings is actually a deterrent for people going now. Like, and I mean, I'm not sure about the students kind of breaking into a song in the middle of a race, but like I'm all for a bit of a sing song. I think we need more young people with a bit of life in them at race meetings, because the people who go to the races, the lads who turn up in Thurles on a Thursday, they're dying away and they're not being replaced, sadly enough.
Yeah,
I think everyone would get a bit of crack out of it though. Like, if it was like a small race day there, and a big group were there and having a bit of crack in the stands, like if you had a horse running, like you kind of nearly appreciate it more if there was a bit of atmosphere on the track, instead of like a few people standing at the rail barely even tapping your horse in. If there was a bit of atmosphere, a bit of buzz, a bit of cheering, no matter who's doing it or what they're singing about, I think it kind of adds to it for even the owners and trainers and jockeys, doesn't it?
Or even a karaoke, or like a singing with the stars, where like if Aidan O'Brien against Charles Burns in the final, singing a song of their choice.
Jerry Hannon coming to the furlong pole, breaking into something. Yeah, we could see it all happening in the future. Anyway, we have another big week's racing coming up this weekend. We've Cheltenham on, October meeting in Cheltenham. That would be good. We've also got a Group 1 in Doncaster, where we have the Lion in Winter, who was taken out last week. It's looking like he'll go there. So another big weekend's racing. But did anything catch your eye last week, Johnny? Something you think we can follow going forward?
Yeah, as you say, Vinny, I was at Limerick, and I let's get up the results here. I actually thought the performance of a horse in the first race, your good friend Tom Weeks was he was very sweet on this Mr. Percy beforehand in the maiden hurdle. So Percy, I think, had his last horse at a race was bought by Mark Tregonning there the other day, and he's kind of who obviously trains for Percy. But this Mr. Percy, he jinked and unseated Darrell Jacob at the first at Gorham, but he was sent off 2-5, and he was well backed again on Saturday, having produced a very smart performance when last seen on the flat. This horse has a lot of ability. I'm very interested to see where he goes going forward. There's some good forms to Limerick that day, but Mr. Percy is one I'll be following on nice ground. He could step up and trip as well.
There you go. With no conferring, I was picking the same horse. Really impressed with that. I think he could be a very nice horse. Liked what Darrell Jacobs was saying as well about him, that the previous day he said it was just the fact he hadn't seen a hurdle since coming off the flat. So this week they went and schooled him early in the week. Darrell went down, I think, on Thursday or Friday and schooled him again, and he knew his job. He did very well. I think he looks a professional sort. I could see him doing very well over the winter months. Emma, what about you? Did you spot something?
Yeah, I just thought one that was interestingly bred and interestingly owned. Paul Byrne had a winner in Punchestown on Tuesday, I think, in the bumper. It was a filly who's a half sister to Spillan's Tower. She's by Yates. I just thought it was interesting how Paul got his hands on this horse, like bred by Norman McManus. You'd have thought they would have been dying to keep onto her, considering what Spillan's Tower has been done. But maybe he got her kind of earlier before he came out on the track. But just an interesting one. Patrick said after the race she isn't particularly quick, but she could pick up some black type and bumpers. But she's bred to be pretty good, and in those colours you'd always kind of keep note of them. So yeah, I just thought she could be one worth watching.
And what's her name?
Oh, sorry, Mummy Derry is her name. I think she's actually named. Patrick was saying in the interview afterwards that named after Paul Byrne's grandmother. So might be a bit of sentimental value in there as well.
Good stuff. So he
Paul
might
and
sell
Derry
it back to
connection. There you
JP.
go.
Yeah. You might sell it back to JP at the end. Then. Yeah.
Possibly, yeah.
Money keeps. Yeah, good stuff. Well, look, thanks for all your contributions. Thanks everyone for watching. And if you are gambling this week or any other week, do gamble responsibly and take note of all the new gambling regulations. And make sure to subscribe to our channel so you see all the other shows we have coming up during the week. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.